Evan Giddings and Marc Grandy with you here on the 415ers podcast. As always, Monday, Wednesday, Friday reaction episode here today for the 37-15 49ers victory in Week 5 against the Carolina Panthers. The defense, by the way, has still yet to allow a touchdown in the first half through 5 games. Have not done it so far. Although I was a little disappointed in them, about 5 yards per play for the Panthers today. That's gonna jack up the 3.8 that it's had so far this year.
How dare they? How dare they? They're not going to be on pace for the stingiest defense of all time anymore after this one. That's too bad.
It's simply unacceptable. No, so what I also, and I want to transition to the offense now a little bit. You know, to me, we got the graphic down at the bottom there. Jimmy Garoppolo, 18 of 30, 253 yards and 2 touchdowns with, most importantly, 0 turnovers. I know that George Kittle had a fumble early, but, you know, you were sort of talking about, was there a danger zone at all? Was there a time in the game when you felt like Carolina was in it? And that end of the second quarter maybe was the only time that I did, considering they had the ball with technically a chance to tie. Of course, Mosley goes in and then makes the pick six that effectively ended the game. But in the second half, you know, Carolina goes down and moves the ball. They get some help on special teams from back-to-back long returns, which led to the Robbie Gould injury that you talked about. But the 49ers offense in that second half, 3 touchdowns. Like, they finished drives and for the game went 4 of 4 in the red zone. Whereas in games past through the first 4 weeks, tossing a couple of them out because of the Lance factor, but specifically Denver, Rams, and then now with the Panthers, there were times the last 2 games where I felt like the offense stalled a bit, could have gotten more. And today, against a team they should have punished, absolutely did, especially offensively, being able to finish drives.
Yeah, you were right in that second half. The offense, did a great job punching it in the end zone. That Deebo Samuel touchdown, who the Niners really struggled to get him going, specifically in the passing game, and they didn't really try much in the running game. But in the passing game, he was targeted a lot, but just they never could connect, Garoppolo and him. So it was good to see them finish that drive with that. And then there was the Jeff Wilson Jr. touchdown run as well. I think that came early in the fourth quarter, and that was really the final nail in the coffin. But I want to focus here a little bit on the play calling in the first half. I think we saw Kyle Shanahan be a little more aggressive, specifically on early downs, than we've seen in the past. I mean, you look at the game as a whole, first down plays. What's the play call for the 49ers? It was in favor of runs, 15 runs to 12 throws on first downs for the 49ers. Generally, Kyle Shanahan offenses, they're going to run more on first than they pass. And I know that's kind of, a point of contention for 49ers fans. They want to see their team be more aggressive on first downs. That was the case in the first half. You look in the first quarter, the Niners ran 8 offensive plays on first downs, 2 runs, 6 passes. It evened out a little bit more in that second quarter. It was 6 run, 8 pass overall in the first half. And then you figure with a lead in the second half, you're going to see Kyle Shanahan get a little bit more conservative, try to run some clock, and, just take away any Carolina chance of winning the game by putting together some long drives. The Niners did that. They got into the end zone. They won the game. But I don't know about you, but I was encouraged in the first half with how willing Kyle Shanahan was to put the ball in Jimmy Garoppolo's hands. There were some play action ones. There were some screens. There were early throws to George Kittle. Over the middle, Jawan Jennings for a long gain. I was encouraged with the play calling, specifically on early downs, first downs, throwing the ball, allowing Jimmy Garoppolo to get in a rhythm. He talked after week 3 how, it takes some time to get back in the swing of things. I think we see it now, and I think we see Kyle Shanahan play calling, kind of confirming that Jimmy Garoppolo is feeling better, that he's more into a rhythm now, because we did not see play calling like that the first few starts for Jimmy Garoppolo, but we did in this game. So I think that means Kyle Shanahan is feeling better about Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo is playing better, and I think we might see that trend continue, especially when you run the ball as well as they did today. It affords you the ability to throw on early downs, 1, because the defense might be expecting run, and 2, because you're confident you can get 6 yards on a 2nd and 10 and set up a 3rd and manageable. So I think we're seeing Kyle Shanahan kind of evolve with his play calling early on downs, and trying to get a bit more aggressive with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, I think there's a few branches there, a lot of good points. One, I felt like the play calling was consistent throughout the entire game. The difference was they didn't finish those drives in the first
Yeah.
half, or, they had a blocked field goal. There was a fumble. There were certain things that happened that didn't affect the way that Shanahan called the rest of the game. He stuck to his plan, and eventually the dam burst, as we talked about on Monday night against the Los Angeles Rams. The same thing happened today, just much earlier against the Panthers. Two, I felt like the run, or the pass set up the run today, and that could be something to keep note of moving forward, how Shanahan wants to use Jimmy Garoppolo on early downs, trusting him more to move the football, which leads to the third point, which I felt like Shanahan trusted Garoppolo a lot more today, and that trust was then extended from Jimmy to his weapons. We saw him put a couple balls in the air for George Kittle, for Jawan Jennings, for Tevin freaking Coleman,
What a
throwing
catch.
him a 28-yard jump ball on the sideline. Like, he was okay on third down, on early downs, being willing to put a ball in a place where his guy could go make a play. And that, as much as sometimes gives 49ers fans pause because Jimmy Garoppolo's throwing near a defender, today it worked out for him because I felt like everyone was on more of a same page. Even though Debo didn't have too many touches, they saved him for when they needed him to. And I felt like getting Ayuk involved, getting Jennings involved, getting Kittle involved just made the offense flow that much more seamlessly, to the point where in the second half, Carolina really just didn't have any answers.
Yeah, no, they didn't. And I want to focus on that Tevin Coleman catch because there's kind of a funny story behind it. So Tevin Coleman talked post game, and he said that they ran that play in practice all week long. And Jimmy was supposed to be throwing the ball to Tevin Coleman on the sideline, but for whatever reason, he just didn't. He was supposed to throw there, but he didn't. And, they would talk after practice, and Jimmy would be like, "Hey, I'm sorry, man. I'll get you the ball in the game. I promise you. Like, I'll throw it to you in the game." But the way the play is designed, it's only supposed to be thrown to Tevin Coleman if it's a linebacker running with him. But guess what? It was a defensive back running with Tevin Coleman on that play. But Coleman was still confident that Jimmy was going to throw him the ball because of the promise that Jimmy Garoppolo made him after not throwing him the ball in practice. So Jimmy, despite facing heavy pressure, put a nice ball up on the sideline, only where Tevin Coleman could get it. And a running back who was, a free agent just a few weeks ago goes up and makes an incredible play on the sideline. Just a remarkable play, maybe the least probable play in this entire game there, that Jimmy Garoppolo to Tevin Coleman, catch. And I'm not sure what was, more impressive, Garoppolo's throw, considering he got hit hard right as he released it, or Coleman's catch, coming from a running back position to make that kind of play. A funny story on that play, but one of the more impressive plays of the day for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't have a chance to listen to Tevin Coleman after the game. That's fantastic. And look, it again, I think, furthers the point that there appears to be more trust offensively between head coach, quarterback, play calling, and the entire offense. I mean, I know a big question that we had for Monday was, how would they get Kittle involved? Big question for this week, how would they get Kittle involved? Well, 2 of the first 3 plays went to George Kittle. So right off the bat, they were going to let Carolina know our tight end will be used today, even though they didn't technically get him the ball in the second half. I think he had the 5 for 47 on 6 targets, all of which in the first 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But then Ayuk got going in the second half. He had some chunk plays. Jawan Jennings had a big third down in the second half where, Jimmy had pressure coming, had to get the ball out. Wasn't the best throw, but Jennings turns what probably should have been a 4-yard play and a 4th down into like a 15-yard third down conversion. So, look, the 49ers had every right to believe that they should outplay Carolina today, and they did. So, harping back to the point that you expect domination in a situation like this, and they give it to you, especially offensively, through the air, on the ground. They did what they had to do, and that's why, at least for me, it's a little hard to say, all right, this person was absolutely excellent today, because everyone was good. Everyone had to be good for them to beat Carolina, and that's what they did.
Yeah, I wanted to jump back to something you mentioned. It was that Juwan Jennings third down conversion. It was that drive that spanned the third and fourth quarters. That was their third big third down conversion of that drive. And this was a really, really important drive. First, it was the 3rd and 8 to Kyle Juszczyk, who made a nice play along the right sideline, broke a tackle, got the first down and a whole lot more. Next, third down, 3rd and 8, a conversion to Brandon Ayuk. You mentioned not much Kittle in the second half, not any Kittle, at least in the passing game in the second half, but Jimmy Garoppolo kind of spread the targets around and got others, including Ayuk, involved. That's 2 big 3rd and long conversions. And then the third is that 3rd and 10 to Juwan Jennings that you previously mentioned. 3 huge third down conversions on that drive eventually turns into a Jeff Wilson Jr. 1-yard touchdown. That made it 30-12 49ers with 12 and a half minutes left in the game. Game's over at that point. 3 huge third down conversions. Overall in the game, the 49ers, 7 of 12 on third downs. Not many of them were as long as those 3, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 8, and 3rd and 10. But I think that drive specifically, we saw Jimmy Garoppolo and his receivers come through in big moments. And that might have been, the most important drive of the game. If you don't get that 3rd and 8, the first one, the Panthers get the ball right back with decent field position. Who knows how the game might change? Not saying the defense is going to give up a couple of scores to allow the Panthers to win that game, but it could have come down to the wire more than it did if it weren't for those 3 big third down conversions from 3 different players, none of which named Deebo Samuel or George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Brandon Ayuk, and then Juwan Jennings. We're seeing the depth of this offense as well in this game.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. The 49ers were good offensively. They were good in the running game. I mean, they were averaging about 5.5 yards per carry midway through the second half. I know garbage time is going to change some of the overall numbers, mainly more defensively than offensively, because they didn't really try and continue to capitalize on Carolina. But, and look, Jimmy Garoppolo, I know that we always have something with a but at the end of it for Jimmy G today. But he was Jimmy good. Like, he wasn't Jimmy great, but he was Jimmy good. And that's what the 49ers need him to be. Kind of talked about at the beginning of this, discussion about the offense, but 0 turnovers are the most important number that I look for when Jimmy Garoppolo is under center. Like, he had some bad plays, right? I mean, I think there was a play in the first half that probably should have been picked on a throw towards Deebo Samuel in the second drive, pardon me, where Carolina had a chance to make a play, did not. That was a Jimmy no throw. I know in the first drive of the second half, Jimmy got bailed out a little bit on a 4th down where he had George Kittle open. He had Juwan Jennings open running up the seam. He instead tries to force it to the outside, and they get a call on Carolina's defensive back that extend the drive and then turns into a 4-yard touchdown eventually to Deebo. But the play before that, he was a little late getting it to him in the back of the end zone, in which Deebo couldn't make a play on it. But then gets erased, of course, because all is well that ends in a touchdown. So there were some throws that I think Jimmy sure would have wanted back. And 18 of 30 is nothing to write home about. But he made the plays, as you alluded to, on those 3 third downs that they needed him to make. And that is when the 49ers offense, I believe, is at their best. Maybe it's not always going to be perfect, but they are converting when they need to. And against a team like Carolina that has no reason to believe they should be in a game, you can't give them any. Offensively, they didn't do that today.
What I thought was interesting was Jimmy Garoppolo actually was more efficient and generally better throwing the ball when he wasn't targeting Deebo Samuel. And I think, we saw J.C. Horn, the young corner for Carolina, kind of match up with Deebo for much of the game. And J.C. Horn went out with an injury in that second half. We hope he's all right moving forward. But overall, Garoppolo, you can see the stats if you're watching on YouTube, 18 of 30, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns. When targeting Deebo Samuel, Jimmy Garoppolo, 2 of 9 passing for 20 yards and that 1 touchdown. When targeting everyone else, 16 of 21 for 233 yards and a touchdown. And of course, no turnovers when he was targeting anyone. No turnovers at all in the game. So interesting numbers there. It kind of makes you feel like the Panthers were going to lock down, or at least try to lock down, Deebo Samuel, and they were okay with Jimmy Garoppolo and other 49ers weapons beating them. And Jimmy Garoppolo took what the defense gave him, and you got to credit him for that. This was a good Jimmy game, as you mentioned. And if Jimmy Garoppolo plays at this level, Evan, for the rest of the year, maybe some minor hiccups here or there, maybe a bit better in some, a bit worse in others. But if he plays on average at this level, Evan, the 49ers will have a chance to be the number 1 seed in the NFC. He played well enough to win. When you have a defense like this, you're going to win a lot of games when you get just this level quarterback play from your starter.